All right, Ms. Harwood, you're ready to go.
Hi, thank you all for joining us. I know the first session is going over a little bit, so I appreciate you waiting. I'm Tina Harwood, one of the counselors, and wanted to go over with you the highly selective college process. And I'm trying to move one more thing over there. Okay. So what does highly selective mean? Colleges that admit fewer than 25% of their applicants in general is what is considered highly selective. And you might at first think, well, that's a big number. But when you look at the colleges who are in the 25% and below range, it really is not as giant a number as you might think. Any college with an acceptance rate of less than 15% would generally be considered a reach school for even our most highly selective students who are at the top of their game and have done, all the right things. So some colleges get below 5% in their acceptance rate. So there is a wide range within that 25% group. But in general, 30% or below is still extremely selective. And so when you are reviewing colleges with your student and you see that, you have to think about, does your student have the potential for admission at these schools? Because we want students to be realistic. We certainly want to, let them try and follow and pursue their dreams. But at the same time, there's got to be some reality as to if they have the requirements to meet their general admitted student for that college. Can I go to okay. Ms. Gross, can you move the next screen? Okay. So if you are aiming for the most selective colleges, there is no magic formula for acceptance. You can do all the right things and be the top of your class and be the valedictorian or the salutatorian and still not be admitted. And that may be hard to believe, but it is true because you are competing against the same type of student as you are for all those same few spots. So you have to think about the entire United States and how many thousands of colleges there are and how many thousands of students are applying. And you've got to come up with a way to make yourself stand out. I mean, they're looking for students who have taken our most rigorous courses, the most rigorous courses offered across the country. Some schools don't have every single rigorous course that might be considered important to that school. But certainly if your major or intended major is in one area, say science, then maybe taking additional classes, that you probably already have done would help you stand out because that's something you're interested in. Standardized test scores are always considered important for students. And of course, right now with COVID-19, they're going to be, this application pool is probably going to be looked at differently from the average admitted student. I mean, they got to look at students holistically in a different way in light of the coronavirus and how that has impacted the students' ability to, first of all, even at a non-specialized school, but especially at specialized schools, depending upon your major, you've got to show excellence in that area. So you want to be an academic standout in any area that you have the greatest interest. You may take AP classes across the board in say 5 or 6 different academic areas, but truly if you're passionate about one area, they're hoping to glean something different from you as to what all you have taken in those areas. So that will also be reflected in say your test scores, and also if you take subject tests in certain areas, say like science or in English, they'll be thinking that that is something that kind of measures your true passion and your drive and ambition to go into one area. They are looking for that out of the box thinking. They have thousands of students who are at the top of the class, who are great test scores, but they want to see something different. What makes you someone who should be on their campus versus someone who looks just exactly like you and has the same scores in the same test? So out of the box is probably the biggest advantage you could give yourself as to what's going to make you different. The subject test right now, everything's changing a little bit, but in general, most highly selective schools are looking at having 2 area subject tests. and that's probably pretty much the norm. It is something that you would have to actually look on the college admissions website to see which tests in particular they are looking for. Generally, math and 1 and 2 are considered the same test. So if you take both of those, that's great. But if a college is asking for 2 different subject tests, then you probably still need to take an additional subject test than just math 1 and math 2. Taking the ACT in writing can sometimes be, with writing can sometimes be accepted by a school for a subject test. Depends upon their website and what they're looking at. Additionally, what are we going to be doing with coronavirus at this time? Because not every student may have finished taking the ACT or the SAT this past year, and going into this fall and college application process, if you didn't get to get in your ACT or SAT, they are also considering AP scores. So the end of your junior year, if you took AP scores and have those results, that might be something the school will take in lieu of standardized testing. Because first they're looking at transcripts and standardized tests. If you don't have an SAT or ACT, this would be an additional option that you could consider. It will be on a school by school basis, but it's still something that they are now broadening their horizons to try and glean more about a student because of the coronavirus. And here is a list of the Ivy League schools right now and their testing requirements. And if you will look in the first column coming all the way down, the X is looking for not required for the SAT or the ACT for most all of the schools, except for athletes. They're still requiring the SAT or ACT for all athletes, but in general, they are saying it's required or recommended, but more recommended, but it is not going to be required. So that's a big change from the past. So that might benefit a student, especially if you've taken a lot more AP scores and have those to be able to send, than let's say your best SAT or ACT score. Every college will be a little bit different, but it is at least something to consider. And you know, it's a great avenue for some students to be able to have that as an option. And even for like the AP exams, those are optional too. But if you got the scores and you did well, send them. It's a great thing. The interview. Something that will help you stand out is you often can interview with local alumni people. And we often have students who arrange for their interviews, you know, even at a Starbucks sometimes, but at Walton in the College Corner, students meet a college representative. And oftentimes, you know, has been, you know, parents who live in the area who went to the school, who will do the first round of interviews and then report back to the college. This is a way for you to stand out with the interviewer. They sometimes will do group interviews, especially when they're looking for scholarships for different application processes. And it's a great way to see how you interact with other students. And there are ways that you can, you know, prepare for this, and we have some tips on that too. But you can also, when you fill out your application, there is a box where you can check where you actually request an interview. And once your application's been received, it will be scheduled, and then they'll tell you how it will be handled, you know, and sometimes they have local events, which normally would have been like when the reps are coming to the area, they might meet, you know, the couple of reps might meet together with students who are interested in that school. So right now, because of coronavirus, may all be virtual, which that's okay too, but at least that will give you a different edge in if you get to that interview process. And again, you can have your interview on Walton's campus and coordinate that with Ms. Groves. Be yourself, you know, be prepared, but be yourself. You need to know about the school that you're interviewing with. You want to be as knowledgeable that you have searched their website. If you're interested in a particular academic area, that you've looked at the professors who are teaching in those areas, that you've looked at the research that they're conducting. Is that something of interest to you? Knowing more depth about the school when you speak to an interviewer, everything on the website is good. And because you might not be able to take a visit because it's too far, and now with the, you know, most campus tours are not happening except virtually. It is a way for you to spend your time devoting to learning about the school. Why is it a good fit for you? What do you think is going to make you be a good fit for them? What are you going to contribute to their campus? They're looking for kids who are going to make a difference on their campus. Be inquisitive, ask questions about what your major is, ask questions about opportunities that you would have on their campus to do research, study abroad programs, internships, things like that. Dress casual, and you want to look your best and to be your best. The X factor. What is going to make a difference? Be different. They've got a lot of kids that all look the same on paper. They want to know why you're different. Why should you come to their campus? Because they've got to make hard decisions, and this is where they've got to discriminate the same GPAs, same test scores, same kids, but why is this one chosen over another one? And sometimes they're looking at making up an interesting class of admitted freshmen, and they don't want everyone to be all in a major for pre-med or all in a major for something else. I mean, they're looking to make it so that there's a lot of diversity with their freshman class and a lot of interest to have, the students feed off of each other intellectually. So there are other things that you have to show how interesting you are and what you will contribute to make them think that you'd be a great fit for their school. They want to see that you are genuinely interested and that you are true to who you are, to yourself. Get on the college's radar. Ms. Gross spoke about that in the previous presentation, by going to showing demonstrated interest. They don't want anybody who's just applying because it's an Ivy League school or it's a top rated school or it's one of the hardest schools to get in the country. They have lots of people who do that every year. Why are you that interested in that school? MIT, one of the questions they ask the counselors is, why should this student come to MIT? Why would they be a good fit on our campus? And oftentimes that's one of the hardest questions I feel like, I have to write about. And I often, talk to the student to learn more why they think MIT is the right fit for them. Yes, it's one of the most prestigious schools in the country, but it's getting to why you would fit on their campus. Because generally their campus is going to be great to be. But
I got this one.
Let's go sleep أنا وياك.
Mama, eat some more.
معش وقع على الأرض. Pick it up.
Whoever's that talking, can you maybe just
بدك fruit?
I chop it.
You don't drop it.
No, I chopped it. See, that way he won't get out.
If I give you too much fruit like yesterday, you'll throw up.
when you
give
are
it to
reaching
Daddy.
out to the college to ask them questions, it is so important for it to be the student, not the parent. And parents, if you want to call and ask questions, that's fine. Maybe, block your caller ID so they don't know your name, and you can call and ask all the questions you want. But they want to hear from the student. This is about the student. When they walk on their campus, most students are going to be 18 and they're an adult. And, they're attracting that student to their campus just as much as you want to be there. They want to attract the best and the brightest for their campus too. So it's not about mom and dad calling, it's about the student calling and showing that additional interest, that additional initiative, why you're going to be special for them. Some particular scholarships require a nomination. When you're applying for, once you apply to a school, you can apply for their scholarship. And we at Walton have a process where we will have the application for in-house, where you can apply and complete it, and then there'll be a committee that goes through and selects
Yeah.
to recommend for the one.
Yes, يا حياتي, I'm gonna give you. Hold on.
So we can nominate. If you're listening to this presentation and your microphone's on, please mute it because it's hard for everyone, I'm sure, to hear. Thank you. Beyond the qualifications that each one is looking for is a particular strength or accomplishment, something original. You know, if you are very interested in doing scientific research and you've maybe taken a class during the summer or done some research with, you know, say a dentist in the area or with another student, that you think that you could. So publishing your original research is a great way to stand out. It's making you completely different from anyone else who might be applying for the same position at the school. Leadership is always important, and it's something that I think most schools look more to expect from students. So it's like, what did you do in that leadership position that made you stand out? Did you start a new organization and become the head of the organization? Did you, you know, have some different way of creating your company or your organization that you were volunteering and getting students to volunteer with? You know, you want to, you know, say you did stuff and not really brag, but talk about why that was important to you. What made you want to be involved in that particular area? And really put into writing, you know, from your heart, what this has meant to you to do. Selective college scholarships that require nominations. The University of Virginia, the Jefferson Scholars Program is phenomenal and a phenomenal scholarship. Davidson with the Belk Scholarship, Indiana University with the Wells Scholars. Other selective scholarships that do not require any nomination that anyone can apply for. Washington University in St. Louis, Boston, University of Notre Dame, University of North Carolina, all have scholarships. And most colleges have some type of a scholarship program that students can apply to once they have already applied to the actual college. So there are always opportunities to look for, and some of the colleges require a separate application for their honors colleges. So it's something to consider when you make those first applications. Georgia Tech admissions factors, obviously academic preparation. They are looking for the top of the class in most all areas, especially if you're looking at going into engineering. Standardized test scores, looking to see what you've given back to the community, your essays, your recommendations, which are often very important at this point in time, especially for an engineering school. If you've been a part of the engineering program at Walton, have engineering teachers write your recommendations. And you want to have someone who's going to speak to you about your specific abilities in that major if you are looking at going to stay into engineering, or if it's biomedical engineering, you know, your teachers who took biomedical classes, engineering classes with. Most do not require, Georgia Tech does not require the interview except for non-native speaking English speakers here in the United States. It also will depend upon your major selection. Some majors are definitely more competitive than others. And then they're still looking for that institutional fit. What will you bring to their campus? And how will you contribute to them? You can find out more about each of these on their website. If you look at the Georgia Tech admissions for the class of 2020 that's just coming in right now for the fall, they have 40,000 applications. Their overall admit rate is 20%. So it is a highly selective school, as it should be for the 4th engineering school in the United States. For the SAT, ACT 1470 and 33, they do not say specifically the number of advanced placement classes, but certainly it's for students who are tracking in that top rank in our school, and certainly those who have attained the top ranks in the math classes that we have to offer here at Walton. They are really looking for that, depending upon your major. If you're gonna be a business major, you know, being in the top math may not be as important, but certainly for engineering, it would be highly considered. Our students, we had 176 apply, 42 accepted, so our acceptance rate was just under 24%. However, when you look at students who were also offered that transfer pathway, we had 71 students, and you combine the admitted students under regular decision or regular or early action And also the transfer students, we had 64% acceptance rate. So that's pretty amazing. You know, when nationwide, worldwide, it's only at 20%. So that's awesome. Average Walton students of 1550 on the SAT and a 35 on the ACT and a GPA of 4.53. So competition is pretty fierce, but if that's your dream school, it is a fantastic place to be. Just know what you're looking at when you start to apply, okay? For the Ivies overall, we have really been looking at statistics the last few years because there's early round and regular decision. And if you notice, if you take, say, Brown University on the top line, for overall acceptance rate, theirs is 6.6%. But if you look at overall acceptance, if you look at early round acceptance, it's 18.18%. So that's triple the difference of students who apply and get in if you're willing to go early round and early decision. And when they're looking at being ED, early decision, you are making that commitment. That is the school, if you get into, you are committing to go there. And it is binding. And for every school, they have a little bit different way of they do it and call it something different, but it is really looking to honor you and award you with acceptance if you are willing to make that commitment to early decision. That also puts you on the hook for paying for school. And oftentimes this can maybe be a slight disadvantage if you are not sure how you're going to pay for school. These colleges, you know, want you to have filled out the CSS profile. They know what they're expecting from your family to contribute. And then you have to be able to look and figure out if you were accepted, would you be able to pay for the rest of it? And if you are, you have a much greater chance of being admitted and accepted if you go early decision. So if you look at, again, on Brown, when you go to regular decision, their acceptance rate is 5.17. So going from 18% for doing ED is a huge jump. And it's really that way across the board if you look at all the actual Ivy League schools. And the percentage is highest if you're looking at going early decision. So that significantly improves your odds, but you still have to have all the other things that go into that to be able to stand out to them. And looking at other highly selective schools, it's really coming down to very similar statistics as far as ED goes. But these are looking back like for 3 years for early action and early decision college admissions. So if you look at Johns Hopkins, about 3/4 the way down. For them in 2023, their ED acceptance was 31%. And it was 29.95% last year and 30.56% 2 years ago. So it's really kind of stayed about the same, maybe increased a little bit. Seems like, you know, the numbers may be getting more fierce for more kids are going early decision. They're willing to make that commitment if they get in, if they are accepted, that they are going. But it's still a great advantage over their general acceptance rates. And often these schools are filling 50% or more of their entire class, freshman class, with early decision school applications. So that gets them committed. They know that they've got a good, you know, half their class at least coming in, and then they, you know, go through and can be more selective with regular decision later on in the application process. And every school has these types of statistics on their website. So you can look and see how the school has been trending and look and see if early decision has a higher acceptance rate, which in general it seems to be for most all of these highly selective schools. So we highly recommend if you know there's one school over others that you really want to go to, then putting that down and making that commitment. If you have a large list of schools and you'd be happy with going to any of them, that's fine too, but your acceptance rate is a little bit more diminished if you don't do the early decision. But you have to be willing to make that commitment.
All right, Ms. Harwood, you ready to take some questions? Oops.
Okay, so
I'll go ahead.
a little bit late, but I want to answer questions.
All right, you ready to take some questions?
I actually have one bit of trivia I'm gonna throw out there and see if anyone knows. How about that? I can't see what anybody's commenting, but there's one college that had an undefeated football season a few years ago, and they had 17 valedictorians on the football team. Who do you think that school was? And try not to Google it. And Ms. Gross, see if anyone's, what the answers are that are coming in.
Okay, let's see. Central Florida, Harvard, Notre Dame, Naval Academy.
Nope.
Princeton, Clemson, Cornell, Army,
17 valedictorians on the team.
Penn, Georgia Tech, Stanford, MIT.
Bingo. MIT. I didn't even know MIT had a football team until I heard that statistic, and it was like, wow, you know, they're really smart and they're athletic. So it was a great year for them. It was, I think, about 5 years ago.
All right. Okay, we're gonna take a couple of questions here and
Okay.
kind of work their way back. So somebody asked about admissions being more competitive this year because of seniors from the class of 2020 opting to take a gap year. And I'd actually like to answer that question because that's something that I've been tracking. I know a lot of people were concerned about that last spring, and throughout the summer, as I've been talking to colleges and attending presentations, I've been asking that question. And I think the effect of that is actually going to be very minimal. So the range of answers that I got was from no minimal difference to no difference. In some cases, it was less. You know, part of the issue is in order to take a gap year, you have to essentially ask for permission from the college to move your admission forward. And typically there's a good reason involved in that. So colleges, you know, want to be understanding of that. But if it's just because you don't want to take classes now, you know, they have the option of granting that or not. For students that elect to say, oh, I don't want to go there because it's going to be online, so I'm going to take classes at, say, Kennesaw or Georgia State, and then I'll transfer over. Those students now have changed their status, and they are considered transfer students and would have to apply again. So I think the short answer to that question is there really isn't a huge effect with regard to gap year. Let's see here. So,
All right, we've got two questions related to Georgia Tech. One was, do they recalculate the GPA like UGA? And if so, how do they do it? And the second's more related to the presidential scholarship and what they're looking for presidential scholars.
do you want to answer that?
I was going to say, I have not looked at Georgia Tech to see if they've made any shift or change with COVID-19 for their GPA calculation, but historically they have taken the transcript as is. They were not recalculating it like the University of Georgia was. They were taking the transcript at face value.
Right, they take the weighted GPA off the transcript. Is there any data on the ED acceptance rate for Walton students? not particularly for Walton students. I mean, you can look at the college's website to see what the acceptance rate is. I don't think it would vary from our college or our school to another school. It's just the overall rate for that particular college.
Right. Someone I saw asked like if there was a STEM engineering admissions rate that we have kept up with. And I do not believe we have kept statistics on just the STEM engineering or STEM program students, but I would be willing to bet maybe if you talk to Dr. Link or Mr. Benton about see if they are keeping statistics on their programs. We have it for overall at Walton. And if you go in Naviance and look under the school, you know, college, you can see our student population that applied and the numbers that were admitted, what their SAT, ACT, their GPAs were, and those scattergrams and things. And then see where you compare to that.
Okay.
Back over subject test.
Right.
For the subject test, most schools right now are saying that they have been more an optional thing. You'd have to check each particular school, but in general, historically, they have looked at 2 subject tests, and math 1 and math 2 are considered the same test, so that would only count for 1. And then another area, and it's generally something you're more interested in. And secondly, some schools have taken the ACT with writing in lieu of 1 subject test. So again, it depends on each school individually, but this will be posted on the school counseling website that has the graphs about the testing, at least for right now, for what the schools are publishing. But the schools are looking to be more flexible, obviously in light of coronavirus, and obviously in light of, the testing may not be optional to even get subject tests taken if you haven't already taken them, which, since March, most of the testing has been canceled. So, we're all in a unique situation here. And we're hoping that, just like Dr. Miranda said in her email to families, that, we need to have flexibility, patience, and grace. And that is really the colleges are wanting to be able to do that and give that to all the students who are applying to their schools, because they know everyone is struggling in different ways. And they also know everyone hasn't had the same opportunities for either testing or finishing testing, taking activities, participating in activities that they would have normally been participating in. So this class of students is going to look a little bit different, and so is next year's class. The next 4 years classes who are applying, they won't have had the same opportunities. So teacher recommendations may become more important in distinguishing you and your intellectual abilities in the classroom versus your service hours to different organizations. Or how have you been able to take this life situation that has been thrust upon all of us and made a difference in your community in some way? I'm sure that one of the biggest essay questions is always going to be, what did you do during the pandemic? But it's not what you did, it's how you made a difference and how you made a difference in the world. Ms. Gross, someone's asking about gap year students.
Yeah, let me see here. We did talk about, we spoke about many students took a deferred enrollment. Does that mean that competition? No. So the question was, does it mean that enrollments for 2021 will be more difficult? And the answer to that is no. I have my independent survey results are that there hasn't been a significant difference in gap year. The other thing is that if they were going to admit 1,000 students this year and they're only admitting 900, they could potentially have 100 more spots next year for that first year class. So, there's some flexibility. So I think that parents are really worried that everybody's deferring their admission. And from what I can tell, talking to various universities, I don't think that is a significant issue. I mean, it is, in some cases they might be a little bit higher, but at the end of the day, colleges have the option to say, yes, we will defer your admission, or no, we won't. The other thing is that a gap year is intended to be an enrichment year, and students are going to be limited in their opportunities. I mean, you can't travel. Community service may not be an accessible option, you know, to be around other people. It just depends on the circumstances. So I would not worry about that as a deterrent or think that it's going to impact next year's class. There were a couple of questions here though about, can you explain the cost commitment if a student applies early decision? Are you just committing to pay full price?
Well, I would say you are committing to pay full price. You know, the CSS profile that your parent or parents would do alerts the school as to what your financial situation is, and then they will come up with what they, as that private school, expects your family to contribute. And if there is a true financial need, they are looking at, you know, trying to meet that for students. I mean, a lot of schools are advertising they'll meet 100% of financial need. So, you know, it depends upon how they look at your CSS profile of your financial situation. And of course, that is all changing this year in particular, as you know, families have been impacted by coronavirus and employment, unemployment, you know, everything. So if you are accepted under ED, they are looking at you paying what comes out of that CSS profile as your expected contribution. If they expect you to pay full price, then yes, they're looking at full price. That doesn't mean you can't apply for scholarships, and you know, there are scholarships, you know, PTSA has a scholarship here that you could use at a private school anywhere. So you can still take advantage of looking for other scholarships, but in general, you apply to a school and their cost of, you know, going to that school to tuition, room board, books is $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. They're expecting you to pay for that.
Okay. Someone asked which Ivies require the subject tests. And I will tell you, as a point of reference, I would not trust anybody to give you that list. I would say you have to go to the college website, and you have to do that often, because colleges are changing on a daily basis. We're getting emails every day that say we've gone, you know, we're not going to require this, or we're looking at that or something. So do not go to any other site or, you know, College Prep or College Confidential. You really need to look at the college's website to see what they're requiring.
But historically, they have asked for subject tests, but they may ask for specific subject tests based on your major too. So each college is unique and they have their unique requirements. So you got to devote the time to looking at their website and discerning what they're looking for and what they're expecting.
All right, Ms. Harwood, someone asked, do you anticipate in-state applications to spike due to the economy or COVID? If so, do you think standards will again rise with the increased demand for local schools?
I would tend to say there's probably going to be more of a rise in in-state applications, although it's been rising for the last 10, 12 years. Really since 2008, when the economy took a big hit, applications for in-state schools have gone way up. And, you know, probably in 2008, I'm not sure if you needed a 4.0 to get into UGA, but I'm thinking not. That was my oldest, when she graduated from high school at that time, and she was accepted to UGA. So I definitely think it will make an impact depending upon the length of this process, and, you know, families losing jobs and losing income to pay for out-of-state schools that they might have done so in, you know, any other year. You know, the competition's pretty fierce. I'm not sure how much higher it can go. And I think that, you know, the colleges will be sensitive to that. You know, UGA, Georgia Tech, and Georgia State did a Zoom meeting where they had a moderator asking them questions, and they all three said, you know, they were just amazed at learning more about individual staff in the past, that they were reading applications, they were having interviews, they were getting to know the people who were applying to their schools on a different level. And it was making them as applications, admissions people who read the applications, like they were so humble, thinking, they have such a huge job to undertake, and they want to find the best in you. They're not looking to, pull you apart like, oh, you made a 4 on the AP exam or something like that. They're looking to see who you are and what makes you unique. And they want the best for you. And, hopefully it won't hugely change the numbers as far as GPAs and scores, but it is definitely going to be possible with this virus situation.
Someone asked about the UGA honors program, and do we have any statistics specifically about Walton students? So with the honors program, in the early application round, they take the highest students, and whatever that percentage is, they look at the GPA and test scores, and they're taking the highest students, and then they're offering an invitation for the honors program. Anybody that's not offered that opportunity there, or students that are applying in the regular decision, have the option to apply for the honors program. And again, it's just based on their selection criteria, but it usually represents the top academic students. Ms. Harwood, this is a perfect question for you based on your research, and it's, if a student meets the average academic requirements for Ivy Leagues, could you please give some examples of the X factor that can be received favorably?
I would be happy to answer that question. So, what would make you a unique student would be someone who possibly spoke 8 different languages. I had a student who did that and is attending an Ivy League school. Have had a student who has been very involved in their own culture and the preservation of their culture, and in dance and music and playing musical instruments of their culture and performing for their cultural events, that they totally embraced, maybe say different musical instruments and different activities in the school, but they kept that part of their life very unique and very special. And I think that made them very, very different and made them stand out, that they had so much diversity in the amount of activities they participated in the school, which were more Americanized type activities, and then their own personal cultural activities, so that made them stand out. I think sometimes too, the intended major I've had a student who was very interested in going into biomedical engineering and was part of the STEM program and took all those engineering classes and had a really tough choice of deciding which school to go to. And, there was a less expensive school and there was the out-of-state expensive school. And they ultimately ended up going with the out-of-state expensive school because of the research opportunities that when they spoke to the college and got more information, they were just blown away with the opportunities that their student would have. So it made it worth it for them to do that. I think sometimes, like Washington University in St. Louis, they actually publish a list, they send us a list every year of the uniqueness of students. And they've had kids who are, like world champion, like underwater jugglers. They've just kind of got some really quirky things that, kids come up with that they do. And they'll post a video of them winning the world championship of underwater juggling. It's like, okay, so because in order to apply to WashU, you got to be in your top tier and have great scores and great GPAs. So you've already got that. You probably got the recommendation letters. You got all that. But what makes you really different? And so if you're good at something, if you're good at a musical instrument, or if you're good at Latin, take the national Latin exams. Score in the top 1% of the national Latin exam. I mean, that's a national award. So that makes you unique if you've got nationals awards I mean, a lot of students have National Honor Society, which is fantastic, but it's getting to a national level, maybe in a category of something you really enjoy and you're passionate about. Those things can make you stand out as being unique. Sometimes, you know, having a job, if you're in an area where most kids don't work because it's affluent and you don't have to work, you know, getting a job shows that, you don't maybe possibly have to work, but, you know, you want that experience. And, you know, working for a company and having to get along with people, collaborate with people. I mean, you may be doing this in the school environment, but once you're doing it in, you know, in a job environment, it is completely different. You know, the school can't kick you out just because, you know, you and your lab mate didn't get along. But if you're working in a company and you're not getting along, I mean, the company has a choice of, you know, keeping you or not keeping you. So things that you can do that make you completely different from everyone in your area doing the same thing, because, you know,